Good morning, adventurers. My name is Ben, and welcome to a morning show where I sit around, drink some tea, and talk about D&D. So first up, in T&D today, we have my I'm just a woman with a master's degree who loves tacos mug, because I'm one of those three things. I'll let you figure out which one it is, I guess. I don't know why I had to stop to think about that. And inside of it, I have some of the watermelon lime zinger tea that my fiance got a couple weeks ago, and is actually really good. I like it a lot. Plus, no caffeine in it, so me having it at the end of the day here makes it so that I'm not going to be wired up instead of able to sleep when I try to go to bed, because I need to go to bed shortly here, because I have another long day at work tomorrow. Good times. You might be wondering what the deal with the addition here is. I would like to formally introduce you to, oh, here we go, Barnabas and Johnny, as named by my lovely DM Mac, at Mac the Bard, on TikTok. I don't know if he's on any other platforms really, but he's fantastic. Love him to death. But I had gotten these out to terrorize my other DM, the lovely Miss Brooklyn Tuesday, and I had just sort of left them out, and then I had a session later with him, and they were there, and he went, "Hey, that's hilarious," and here we are now. So they're gonna stick around for a while, because why not? I don't see any reason to get rid of them. If you're listening to this section here doesn't make any sense. I have two rubber ducks sitting on my microphone, enjoy them. They're going to hang out and enjoy some tea and D&D with us. Anyway, getting into what we were talking about today, something that comes up far less often than it actually probably should: writing the final chapter in your D&D campaign. This is something that I am doing right now, actually, which is part of the reason that I wanted to talk about it. And I've actually got a session coming up a week from tomorrow to really sort of kick off this final chapter. We just finished up sort of like an interlude between their central arc and this final epic conclusion to the campaign. One of my players does watch these videos religiously. I appreciate her very much for doing so. But that does mean that I'm not going to be sharing a lot of details with you guys about what's going on. I will be doing a full video on that. It won't be this season, because we won't be wrapping it this season. It will probably be next season, because we are aiming to wrap our campaign that will have been going on for 3 years in June, or 3 years in May. We're aiming to wrap it in June. So we will have been playing this campaign for just over 3 years. It will be a campaign that ran from level 1 to level 20, which is amazing. I genuinely didn't know if I was ever going to be able to run a campaign like that, so I'm super happy with being able to do that, with having these players that are committed to getting to it, or getting to the end here, and seeing this one through. So, anyway, that's not the point of what we're talking about. The point of what we were talking about is talking about writing this final chapter here. This is obviously going to be something that greatly depends on the story that you guys have been telling up to this point, but we're going to go over a couple of things that I find to be some of the most important things when talking about wrapping everything in a satisfying way. Because really, when you put in any amount of time, be it, 3 months or 3 years or 30 years or whatever, into a D&D game, you want that game to have a good ending, like a solid, fulfilling ending, something that everybody walks away proud of. And there is no way to know for sure that that's going to happen until you just do it and see where everything sort of falls. And I feel like there's just kind of a sense that washes over a table at the end of a campaign that's like, yeah, that was good. We're good with that. That makes us happy. Or some effect of happy. If you've seen Critical Role, you know what I'm talking about. There is that feeling of like closure to it that you want to hit. But getting there can be hard. So now that I've vamped for a little bit here for no discernible reason, let's talk about a couple of the things that I think you really want to sort of hammer home when you are talking about finishing up a campaign that has been going on for any real amount of time, any decent amount of time. So, first things first, if you've been running a game for a while and you have had it be a more roleplay focused game, as pretty much all of my videos are, or all of my episodes, I guess, are, they focus more on roleplay based things as opposed to combat heavy or mechanically intensive or war gamey kind of games. They do focus more on the roleplay aspect of it because it is the more, I don't want to say it's the more nuanced way to do it, but it is the less clear-cut way to do it. Because with like a war game or a mechanical game kind of thing, the it is still challenging to do. I'm not in any way disparaging that kind of playstyle or that kind of prep or anything like that. But it is a little bit more of a linear path to get to the end, because what you need to do is craft very meticulously, but craft an extensive sort of end game battle that stretches over a long stretch or is very mechanically fulfilling, lets people really shine as their individual character builds and stuff like that, which is very difficult to do. And so I hope in no way anybody thinks that I am disparaging that, because I understand how hard that is. But landing with people's emotions can be a little bit more tricky, I'll say. It's a little bit more of like a fine-tuning kind of thing that you have to get yourself through. So, the first sort of big point here that I have is you want to take stock. And I mean really, really take stock. Where you have gotten to in the campaign is genuinely much more rare than you often will find in D&D campaigns. And so the fact that you've made it this far, kudos to you, big claps, pat on the back, whatever you want there. Genuinely, that is impressive. But you have made it this far and everybody's invested in finishing the game. So you have to stop and really take stock of what you have in front of you. Most specifically, you want to take stock of what story threads you have laid down to lead to this ending here. You don't want to just like spring something on them for the sake of springing something on them. You want it to be something that you've sort of been building to, that if they look back at their notes or cast, memories back to months and months and months ago, they'll be like, oh my God, that's where that was? Wow, that's so crazy. You want to have those threads leading way back into the story that you've been telling so far. So take stock of the story threads that you have open there. Also take stock of any story threads that you have open with regard to the characters specifically. And this is kind of the one that is biggest, I think, on everything I'm going to talk about here. You want to make sure that every single character has had the fulfilling arc that the player set out to accomplish with that character. Well, maybe not set out to accomplish. That they have come around to trying to accomplish. If you have a player who has a character who has been going through a very specific arc, you want to make sure that you give them the opportunity to finish that arc out. And that needs to be an integral part of the plan. It has to be a part of the plan. Because if it's not part of the plan, then you're going to get to the end of the campaign. And while they might have had a blast doing it, might have had a lot of fun leading all the way up to it, they will get to the end there. And then they're going to feel like that lingering sort of itch where they're like, oh, but what would have happened if... And you want to try and quell as many of those what ifs or what would have happened as you can, because those are the things that will undermine any sort of landing stick at the end of a campaign. So it's important to make sure you take stock of where all of your characters are in regard to their personal growth arcs. Those are kind of huge things. And then in addition to taking stock of your story thread so far and your individual character arcs, take stock of where the world is. Honestly, like where has the world come to? Because a resolution to a campaign should feel like something big has happened in the world to some degree, and then the world is. Let me preface. It should feel this way if this is the type of like hero's journey type campaign you're going for. Take stock of where the world is at. The world should feel like it is going to be a better place for what the characters have done in it. Assuming you're playing a more traditional type of adventure game, which I know that the majority of them are, but like just fair is fair. That like there are plenty of people that are playing games where that is not the goal. That is not the end goal. But if you're playing in that kind of game, which is the kind of game that I tend to run, you want to make sure that the world at the end feels like it is a better place for the characters having been there. You want to make sure they feel like they have made a difference in the world. So those three things together are what you really need to sort of pull apart and really stop and take stock of in order to weave together the end of your story here. Because the way that the end of the story is going to go for you is highly dependent on where you are in regard to each of those three things. For example, in my game, I feel that I have done a pretty good job of laying story threads a ways back, so that there are things that the players can look back on and go, oh wow, yeah, okay, yeah, cool. I feel that we resolved a lot of character things, not all of them, because if you resolve all of them, then the end of the game just feels like the end of more like the end of a video game that doesn't really have a lot of emotional impact, as opposed to something that the characters will have more personal stakes in. We resolved a lot of the open-ended stuff, or have like bottlenecked it down in such a way to where it is an easy sort of fix or solution or resolution to it as they make their strides towards the end of the campaign. And then the world has been rocked by several different things, and it is going to continue to be rocked until they help resolve what is going on. So I feel that I have successfully sort of set the things in front of my players for them to take, run with, and accomplish, that will lead the story to this nice sort of conclusion, this epic conclusion that they are going to be happy with, I hope. But it feels like we are in a good spot with that. So with those three major things in mind, I have now gone about... originally, we didn't have like a timer on the end of it, but the fact that the party, or I guess the gaming group, lives in 3 different states, potentially more soon, it has resulted in us wanting to resolve everything when we get to see each other in person, so that we can all be around the same table to finish out this game that we started around the same table 3 years ago. And so, trying to schedule regular games to help keep the momentum going in the end of the story is very important. That is a one tip. That's not really a like writing the end of the game thing, but it is an important piece. If you can keep momentum going, you will not necessarily feel the burnout building as much as early, because sometimes you can write, and you're like, oh my god, I just want to be done with this, because you're going to like the next stop, and then you can't do anything, and then you go to the next stop, and you can't do anything until you play again, and so on and so forth. And so trying to schedule regular sessions is a super helpful way to keep the story building, keep the story going, keep the juices flowing for you, keeping everything sort of organic as you move forward. When you go to construct your final act here, you should know what that climax is going to be, because you should have been laying down all of these story threads up to this point in your campaign. Going back to that number one take stock of thing. You should have a pretty solid idea of what this final climactic event is going to be. Maybe it's not necessarily an event, maybe it's like a series of things, but you should have a general picture of what it is going to be that you are aiming for. Like, you got a target, you want to hit that target. So make sure you know what you're actually shooting at, which you sort of get with when you take stock. Make sure that the characters are ready to finish. Make sure they are ready to be done. Players will play the same characters for a very, very long time if they're emotionally invested in them. And so in order to make the letting go process easier, you want to make sure that they have successfully accomplished the things that they set out to do. You want to make sure that they have the ability to complete that character arc. Again, in the taking stock phase, you need to genuinely really assess what it is that those characters want, what it is that has changed about the way that they interact with the world as you've been going. Make sure you've got it all hammered down in your head so that you can help pull those elements into this core storyline that you're working towards at the end here. And make sure that the world feels like it is being rocked by whatever is happening. Make sure it is ready for whatever is happening. And I don't mean like make sure that every city in the world prepares for like cataclysm or something like that. I mean make sure it the tension in the world feels like it is ready for something to happen. Something big is going to happen, and that is what you want. Personally, for me at least, I've talked about this before a little bit. When I write campaigns, I come up with a vague idea for how I want the overall scope of the campaign to go. And so I kind of know what I want this final act to look like relatively early on, but I leave it way, way open to whatever's going to happen, how it's going to work. But as you go through the story, you sort of work in like a funnel all the way down to that point, and that point is your climax. And so when you get to this last act, you should be right near that tip of the triangle there, but you are still able to pull in these outside things while you are actually pushing forward this one final storyline. There is a finality to this that you are trying to get to. You have to have this sort of like core pillar of storyline. You have to pick the details that are going to actually support that storyline. Make sure that the characters are tied up in it in some capacity. Make sure that the world is tied up in it in some capacity. And make sure that it is telling the end of the story that you set out to tell with your table from the beginning. I rambled around a little ways there, but I did say the things that I wanted to say. So let's recap just a little bit here. First up, take stock. And take stock can be broken out into take stock of your loose story threads, take stock of your loose character threads, and take stock of your loose world threads. And really, those are kind of the biggest three things here for sitting down to prepare to write a final arc to your campaign. In addition to taking stock, you should be really thinking about your central pillar, the main part of this story, the driving force behind this arc that you are trying to create here, while still being able to reach out and tie things into it so that it feels like it is a unified front moving forward. In my mind, the end of a campaign is the closest you're going to get to like railroading in a true open world setting, because the players they have a clear idea of what their final goal is. They have a clear, target at the end. And so writing it more like a storyline as opposed to prepping an open world sandbox for them makes a little bit more sense. You still have to do the open world sandbox prep, but they are all aware of what they're doing. They have a clear cut idea of what's happening, so they're heading in that direction. Just have fun with it. Make sure you have fun with it, because the last thing that I have written down here that I can't remember if I actually said or not out loud is that you need to make sure that it's fun for everyone. And when I say fun for everyone, I mean it needs to follow the tone of the game that everybody sat down to play. If everybody sat down to play a Dark Souls game, and at the end of it you are doing like slapstick type stuff, you are like off the wall doing crazy anime stuff, that's not what people signed up for. And while it might be fun, they're going to look back at it and be like, that was a really weird and awkward kind of ending to it. The same is true for the reverse. If you sat down to have like a goofy, silly kind of fun campaign, and you round it out with like just like deep, hardcore, like very gritty sort of ending, it's going to feel weird and not great. So make sure it is fun for the table that you are sitting at, because that is honestly the most important part. The emotional impact comes tied up in these characters with the understanding of the finality of everything. And as long as it was an engaging and entertaining experience for everybody at the table, it is going to be fun, particularly if you get it to fit the type of story you have been telling. Don't go full anime for the sake of going full anime if you've been running a like Game of Thrones grittiness type campaign. It's not worth it. Round out the campaign the way that you intended to from the very, very beginning. You're going to have a lot more fun with it, I promise. That is everything I have to talk to you guys on that. Let's talk about what shows we have coming out today, because we have a lot of them. It is Monday, which means it is our longest list day of the week. Starting off at the top of my list here, and by top of my list, I mean the order that I decided to type these in when I was typing up my lists. So there's no real order to them at all. We have The Paper Dungeon, Chromatic Dice, Beyond the Realms, Unprepared Casters, Greetings Adventurers, Bards of New York, Hapless Heroes, Ayun Adventures, Cast Party, 3 Black Halflings, Hello from the Magic Tavern, King Leo D&D, Anti-Heroes Anonymous, and the Tabletop Tavern. Give them some love, check them out, let them know that I sent you, because at some point, one of you guys is going to do that, and somebody's going to say, hey, you sent me a viewer for some reason, thank you, and I'm going to go, you got it, and I look forward to the day that we have that interaction, because I think it would be hysterical, and really for no other reason than that. But that is everything I have to talk to you guys about today. Thank you so much for making me part of your morning routine. I really do appreciate it. And thank you so much in particular to my patrons. You guys are the ones that make this show possible. If you are interested in becoming a patron of mine, check out the link in the description of this episode for a link to my Patreon. But as I mentioned, that is everything that I have to talk to you guys about. So don't you forget, drink tea, play D&D, and keep on rolling.